I'm Maximilian. I'm a visiting master student in electrical engineering here at UC Berkeley, and I'm pleasant to have the opportunity to interview Anna-Julia Storch from Dryft today. So, Anna-Julia, do you want to introduce yourself to us? What's your name, what's your business, and what's your role in it?
Yeah, so I'm Anna-Julia Storch. Most people call me AJ. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Dryft. And with Dryft, we use AI agents in combination with mathematical optimization to automate manufacturing operations.
Yeah, so for your background, maybe, what factors have you led to become an entrepreneur instead of pursuing a corporate career?
I think it really started early in my childhood. The very first time I remember I sold something was I was maybe 5 years old and sold leaves, kind of decorated leaves, together with my sister. A year later or 2 years later, I started taking phone calls for the business that my parents were running out of our home, basically. So the traditional entrepreneurship, I would say. And then the other two factors were after that, I ended up becoming a competitive ski racer. I was competing internationally for many years. And I think that time taught me you can only achieve something really, really big if you sacrifice everything else in your life, and by everything I really mean pretty much everything. And that was a good learning period. And then the third one was, I think, when I went to the Center for Digital Technology and Management in Munich, CDTM it's also called. I was there pretty young. I was one of the youngest students in the class. Didn't have much of an idea of what entrepreneurship in the sense of venture capitalism and all these kind of things look like, but met a lot of people there that did this. And I think it just showed me, okay, if they can do it, I can do it too, especially when it relates to starting a company that really uses technology to drive something forward. And yeah, those are the three main things since then.
Speaking of the technology space, what's your value proposition? How do you solve this supply chain problem? And how does the solution address the problem that you have and really maybe also outcompetes existing approaches?
Yeah, so in very simple terms, manufacturing companies today, so by that I mean companies that produce machines, large machines or turbines or cars, they basically have the problem they never have the right parts on stock to build whatever they want to build. So they either have way too much or way too little, or usually both at the same time, and that leads to them losing a lot of money, usually millions and millions of dollars every month, sometimes every minute, funnily, for very, very large companies. And the reason they haven't figured out how to do this well is basically because they have so many parts. I'm talking 100,000, 500,000, 1 million parts that if you have humans, you just can't manage it. And they have a system in place that tries to help them, right? They're called ERPs, Enterprise Resource Planning Systems, but they essentially are more like a database rather than a tool that helps them oversee their parts. So the thing is, every time there's a change happening, let's say your supplier can't deliver, until they see this, it's usually already too late because they have another 1,000 parts. This all just happened too. So that's a problem. The way we solve this is we basically help these companies react to all these changes in the supply chain. But we basically realize it's impossible to write the whole world of manufacturing in a formula, and I think that's also why nobody really figured this out. So we use a combination of AI agents that have context about the company, the supply chain, or the supplier, the part, and everything else you need to know, to then use something like a mathematical optimization to make a economically correct decision based on the current situation this company is in. That's how you can imagine it, yeah.
And the solution is then proposed instead of needs to be actually triggered by someone, right?
That's right. So from a user interaction perspective, the user gets suggestions of things they need to do. It goes all the way to the point that they just have to bulk accept, and the agent starts acting. A typical thing could be our agent follows up with the supplier, make sure that they can actually deliver on time, or can they maybe deliver a little bit earlier than originally. That's a very simple task, but they're much more complex decisions we also make. Yeah.
And I guess that's also what differentiates you from your competition, gives you a competitive advantage, because there's nobody doing that yet, right?
That's right.
And that appears like a really obvious question now. What your business strategy is out of that, but I think the more interesting question, how you bring such a software product to the market, because
generally I think manufacturing is a very in-person business, so we spend a lot of time just talking to supply chain leaders, CEOs of manufacturing companies in person. So I meet them at an event or at a trade show or anything that really comes up that's in person, and then I ask them about their problems. They usually tell me this is one of the top problems or the top problem many times. And from there, I spend some time usually on site with them, especially with enterprise customers, and then usually they sign the contract afterwards.
Early on, we are here in SF in the Silicon Valley. You chose to found here instead of back in Europe where you come from. What are the main factors that made you make that decision?
I get that question a lot. It's the most asked question I ever get. I think the main factor for me is the culture here, and for that in two areas. Like, one is I really believe in this concept of you're the average of the people around you. If I want to be an entrepreneur, and ideally the best entrepreneur in the world, the best other entrepreneurs in the world are currently here, and it just gives me so much joy and like motivation to be around these people that all do so well, that inspire me to do even better, to work even harder, to pay even more attention to a design of the product. And I think that's the number one thing. And related to this, I think the second is culturally more towards like, here, like people are more all in, and they're more towards like, we're gonna change the world and we're gonna build something fundamentally different.
Yeah, and also I guess that's the culture for a company.
Yeah.
When you think back, what were basically maybe one top two factors that made Dryft as successful as it is so far?
I think the number one factor was that we spent so much time with customers in the beginning. Like it's a very standard answer, I guess, but like we flew to these customers on site, we were interns there, we really spent time like being the user ourselves for many, many, many days and weeks and months. And I think that led us to understand like how do these people actually work, and it also led us to understand like are we actually solving a business problem. Like there's so many problems out there, there's so many cool ideas out there, but the question is the problem so big that companies will pay you maybe millions of dollars at some point each? And I think that's what we did really, really well. Second reason is probably we have a very strong technical team early on, and I think that would be long term probably the most important factor.
What's your vision for the next 3 to 5 years for Dryft? Is there something?
Yeah, I think we want to go beyond just supply chain. Like right now, I talked about like making sure parts arrive on time. But if you think a little bit bigger, like we are all about like automating actually all operations that happen in manufacturing to make sure you can produce as fast as possible and things like just flow through. So what other things we need to do for that is like, for example, production planning. Again, it's like this decision you need to make that's actually very mathematical itself, but requires a lot of human judgment depending on the situation. And it's very related to supply chain, so that's like one area we want to look at. And there's many, many others, to the point that we say, okay, can we downgrade these ERPs into a database and not have any human really have to interact with these like old clunky database systems, but instead you have Dryft and maybe even replace the ERP completely. Yeah.
That sounds very visionary. So coming to a conclusion, basically, when you look back also in your entrepreneurial career so far, what are your biggest lessons that you've learned, and maybe what would you tell your younger self, another young entrepreneur, if you would start all over again?
Know why you do the thing you do. Like, why do you want to start a company and what do you want to achieve? Do you want to make money? Do you just want to have a good time? What do you really care about, if you're really honest with yourself? Because we all have very egoistic motivations like down there if we peel off the layers, and I think that helps in guiding you how you make decisions. I think that's a really good thing. The other one is really like get the out of the building. That's usually what Steve Blank, it's a professor at Stanford and also investor in our company, and it's like be with the customer as much as possible. Like don't spend so much time in the office actually, because I think it's just going to slow you down. These are probably things I would advise to do.
So you spent to talk a lot about going all in. What is the hardest thing as an entrepreneur for you?
I would say I overall love the journey. Like I have a very good time. I'm very happy. Probably the happiest I've ever been. But the thing that's hard is like still working hard and believing in yourself when everybody doesn't. Like there's always situations where you get rejected early on or also later. And I think that's really the hardest. Like it's almost like a disaster recovery. If you're really good at that, you're a really good entrepreneur, because there will always be things that thrown at you and you're like, oh no, like, will we ever make this happen? And then if you can recover within an hour or so, that's good. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to mention or that you want to put out there that really helped you on your journey?
Choose the right co-founder. That's the most important thing out of all. I think I have a great co-founder that shares the same values, both in terms of like where we come from, but also where we want to go and how we want to work, but has very, very complementary skills and motivations of why she does it. And I think that helps us never really clash, but at the same time complement each other well. So
yeah, and I guess that also attracts the many very supporters that you are.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.